Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. I'd like to welcome you to my tutorial video on creating and testing a simple Java program using Eclipse. Now, this is being recorded in the summer of 2016 for my introductory programming course. I'm putting it up to YouTube, so other people may have found their way there, or here rather, in which case welcome to you as well. So far the tutorials I've done a separate set for Mac OS X and for Windows, and those were to help people get the software installed. As we get into the Java programming and using tools like Eclipse, there's going to be a lot of commonality between those two platforms, and I'm only going to really demonstrate one. And because I'm a Mac user, it's going to be demonstrated on the Mac. So here what we're going to do is we're going to start up and we're going to take a look at Eclipse a little bit more closely. So if in fact you've gotten to this tutorial and you don't have Eclipse installed and you don't have Java installed, you'll probably want to take a look at those tutorials first and then rejoin us here. So in our tutorial for the installation of Eclipse, we left an icon down here in the dock or in Windows on the toolbar, the taskbar, so that we could start up Eclipse easily. So we're just going to click on that now. And when that doesn't work, we'll click on it again. And we're going to use the default workspace that comes up and say OK. And now we're going to look at the product. OK. And let me spread this out so we get a little more room to take a look at Eclipse. So the view that we're looking at right now is called the Java perspective. Okay, that's a particular configuration of windows and panels in the Eclipse product. Now, the Eclipse product is often referred to as the workbench. And so what we see here is the workbench configured for Java programming. And turns out that Eclipse is a pretty general tool, and it's used for lots of programming, analysis, design, and implementation tasks. It was meant to be a general tool. First and foremost, is probably a Java programming tool. And the designers of Eclipse came up with the idea that instead of trying to configure the product for whatever task you were working on in sort of an ad hoc way, that we would have this concept of perspectives. And a perspective would be a configuration of tools that would open up all together for a particular use case. In this case, Java programming. And how do I know I'm in the Java perspective? Well, if I look in the upper right here, there's a little button that says Java. And that's shows me the current perspective. What other perspectives are there? Well, if we go just to the left of this and we click on the plus icon, we'll get a drop down. And what do we have? Well, we've got Java, the default, Java browsing, one for Git. We're going to be using that a little bit later in the course. Debug, planning, resource, team synchronizing, and XML. Okay, so the one that we're going to be using primarily, at least in the short run, is going to be Java. Okay, but let's say we wanted to go to another one. Let's say we wanted to go to XML. So we'd highlight that, we'd say OK, and we get a reconfiguration of the panels in the product. This is what the designers of the tool thought were appropriate for working with XML applications. And now you see in the upper right-hand corner, we've got both the Java perspective and the XML perspective here. And we can switch from one to the other simply by clicking on their icons. So now I'm back to the Java perspective. Now I'm in the XML perspective. Now I'm back to the Java perspective. It's pretty typical in Eclipse to be able to do things in a number of ways. Okay, so we just showed you how to change perspectives using toolbar icons. Well, that can also be done using the menu. So now I'm going to go up here to the menu, and I'm going to click on Window, Perspective, Open Perspective, and it's offering to debug and Java browsing. Okay, but if I click on Other, I'll get the full list. So now this is another way to get the list of the perspectives that are possible. So for right now, let's just click on Git. That's the version control system that we're going to be using a little bit later in the course. And I'm going to click on OK. And this is the Git perspective. Okay, so we're going to be working for the foreseeable future in the Java perspective. Okay, so before we start looking at the parts of that and what we're able to use it for, let's talk about why we use IDEs in general. So again, IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. And it's the integrated that is the key word here. As a developer, one could use several single-purpose tools in order to get the job done. So to write and compile and test a Java program, you could use a plain text editor to create the Java file, and then you could, at the command line, you could run the Java compiler and see that the code properly compiled. And then at the command line, you could run a test by running the Java virtual machine and seeing if you could get your properly compiled code to run and test. Unfortunately, what you're doing is you're jumping in and out of different products in order to do that. And experienced developers already know that the coding and testing process is probably best done these days when it's done kind of incrementally. So we code a little, we compile that code, then we test that code. We get that to where we want it, then we add a little more logic to the program, we code, then we compile, then we test. So the current style that coders and testers use is iterative. And especially with that kind of style, the overhead of getting into a tool and out of a tool and into another tool and out of that tool and into another tool and out of that tool, it's really time consuming. Products like Eclipse allow us to do all of our tasks in one product. So they've got different parts for things. So where are the parts? Well, we have to manage a lot of files, and the panel that's over here on the left, it's called the Package Explorer, is where we're going to manage our projects, our Java projects, and the files that are inside our Java project. When we are ready to create a new Java program, we're going to work over in the Package Explorer, and we're going to say that we want a new Java program. And as soon as we create it, it's going to pop up in this middle panel, which is the panel for the Java editor. So we're going to spend a lot of our time working on the Java editor until we get the code exactly the way we like it. And we're going to get all the errors out of it. It turns out when we save the file, it gets compiled. So the nature of the Eclipse Java compiler is it works in tandem with the editor. And so we don't really see compiling as a separate step. And then we're going to run a test. And when we run a test, we're going to get a little tab down here in this bottom panel that's going to show us the console output. We're going to be able to see the output. Over here on the right, there's a task list. That's something you can use for a to-do list. That's not something that I particularly use a lot, but some people do. We have an outline. This is particularly helpful for larger Java classes in which you might want to navigate without just kind of roaming through the text. So one can find the bits of the Java program easily in the outline and click on them, and it spins the editor window to exactly that place so you can go work on it. So enough talk. Let's do let's create our first Java project, and then we'll create our first Java class, and then we'll test it. And then after that, we'll be Java programmers. Admittedly, Java programmers in a trivial sense, but still, we'll have used the tool. We'll have some feeling of accomplishment and familiarity with programming Java using the Eclipse tool. So we're going to create a project. And how can we do that? Well, a really nice way to do things that are related to files or groups of files, and a project is simply a group of files, is to come over in this left-hand Package Explorer panel and right-click, okay, and then pick New. Then we have a list of things. So we could say Project, and then we would have to say what kind of project. Or it's already offering us Java Project. So let's just say Java Project. So now it's going to do the typical thing. It's going to open a dialog, and it's going to want a project name. Okay? And we're going to call this my first Eclipse project. Okay? And project names can have spaces in them. They're typically capitalized in a conventional way, just like I did there. It says use execution environment Java SE 1.8, that's fine. That's what we have installed, so it's going to use 1.8. That's good. We're going to take the defaults for all of these things. We're just going to click on Finish. And there's our project. Now, before we go on, I just want to remember I said that you can do things typically a minimum of 3 ways. Well, the way we just created our first project was the typical way that I like to do it, by right-clicking in the Package Explorer panel and saying New, and then picking the kind of project that we want. Okay. Now, as an alternative, you could go up to the menu, and you could click on File, New, Java Project. That would do the same thing. Is one better than the other? No, one isn't any better than the other. There are two ways to exercise the user interface to accomplish the same thing, and that's to accommodate user preferences. Okay? So, I just wanted you to know there was another way to get there. So, a project is a collection of files, okay? And what kind of files are there? Well, right now there's a folder called SRC, which is funny programmer spelling for source code. Our source code is going to go in there. Okay. And then we have a library. Let's open that. These are a bunch of jar files. .jar is the extension. And these are big libraries of Java classes that provide the Java infrastructure. So Java is very much, what some people would say, dog-fooded. Okay? The Java platform is implemented in Java. You know, they eat their own dog food. And so the Java classes are Java code that implement a lot of the standard capabilities of Java that are made available to the programmer, that the programmer doesn't have to create from scratch. And all those classes are put into these jar files, these Java archive files. And there are probably, well, last I heard, there are about 3,500 classes in Java. It's probably well over 4,000 plus now. So there's a lot of code there, okay? And we get to take advantage of it in our code simply because it's hiding there in our JRE system library. Okay, so our Java classes are going to go into our source folder, and we're going to right-click on the source folder, go to New, and now we already have a project. So what do we want? We want a class. So programs in Java are called classes. So let's just say class. Okay. And we come into a dialog, and one of the nice things is that because we showed it where we wanted to put it, it knows that we want to create a Java class in the source folder. Source folder, you can see, within my first Eclipse project. So it's really putting things in just the right place. There's another division of how we store stuff called a package. And right now it says we're in the default package, which is really no package at all. And for right now, we're going to not learn about packages, and we're just going to leave that as is. And now we have to come up with the name of a class. And the classic first program in any language since the 1960s has been, well, maybe 1970s, but has been a program called Hello World. This is a program thought up by the inventors of the C programming language and the Unix operating system, in which there's a simple program that just prints out a single line on the printer or on the console that says "Hello World," and this has become a traditional first thing that we learn how to do in every new programming language or on every new programming platform. So how do we take Hello World and form the proper name of a Java class? Well, Java classes always begin with a capital letter, so capital H for hello, then they go to lowercase, E-L-L-O, lowercase. No spaces between words, but we capitalize the initial letter of every subsequent word. So now it's capital W, lowercase O-R-L-D. Okay, hello world, that's great. Okay, so there's a lot of different stuff here. We're going to take the defaults for everything except down below these boxes. There's some checkboxes that say which method stubs would you like to create. We're going to check the first one, the one for public static void main. And that's going to give us a main method in our class, which is just what we need for a class that you can run. So now we're all set. We're putting it into the proper folder in the proper project. We're giving it a proper name, Hello World. We're saying that it should contain a main. And now we're just going to click the button for finish. So a couple of things have happened here that are interesting. One is that not only have we created a file for the Hello World class, and you can see over here in the Package Explorer panel we have, and it's called hello world.java. Not only have we created it, but we have opened it in the editor panel. That's pretty helpful. And we've also generated some amount of code for free. Okay, so this tool knows that in order to create a Java class, you need a class declaration. That's this line here, public class hello world, and then we have curly braces that hold the contents of the entire class. So that's the curly brace that opens on line 2 and the one that closes on line 9. And then inside we have something called a method, and this is a special one, which is the first thing that runs when you execute a Java class. And it has the special name main, okay? And it has some other special properties, public static void, which we're just going to treat as kind of magic for right now. And so the extent of the method is from the curly brace that opens on line 4 to the curly brace that closes on line 7, okay? And we have a little bit of code in here. This is a single line comment. So this just says that to do, it's going to put it on the task list, okay? And I don't see it over there right now, but it'll show up if we do the right thing there. And then it says it's an auto-generated method stub, which means that it's auto-generated code that we're expected to replace with real code. That's what a stub is, and this is one for the method. Okay, well, you can imagine that this is a pretty simple program because printing hello world out on the screen, on the console as they call it, is a pretty simple thing to do. It's one line of Java code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this comment line and I'm going to delete it. Okay. And then I'm going to get an extra line so that my line of code is right in the middle with the line before and a line after. And we're not always going to do that, but I kind of like that here. Okay. And we are going to use the following code. System .out .println for print line, left paren, double quotes. You see when I typed in the first of the double quotes, I automatically got the second one. So what I did is I typed in the opening paren and the first of the quotes, and I've automatically gotten the closing paren and the closing quote. And what do I want to print out? I want to print out hello, comma, world, exclamation point. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. We've got a little squiggly red line after the closing paren. That's not a good sign. And if you look over along the rule area to the left of the code, we have a red X. And it says if we hover over that red X, it'll give us the complaint. Syntax error, insert semicolon to complete block statements. Oh. So let's insert a semicolon at the end. This is where we find out that every Java statement ends with a semicolon. And now, so we have a proper Java print statement, system.out.println. And inside the parens, we have this argument, hello world, which is a character string, which we know because we have it inside of the double quotes. Okay, and then we finish the statement with a semicolon. So right now, our work is unsaved. How do I know it's unsaved? Well, I happen to know if you look up at this little tab at the top of the editor, you'll see an asterisk in front of the name of the file. And that means we've unsaved changes. Well, how do we save them? Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to click on the diskette icon. Okay, so up here in the toolbar, the first, second, third thing is a diskette icon. So I'm going to click on that. Could I do it other ways? Yeah, there are two other popular ways. One is to go up to the menu and click on File, Save. Now it's already been saved, so we don't see that as an option. And the other is that while we're clicked in the editor, we could use a key sequence Control S, and that would save the file as well. So typically there are at least three ways to do things, and saving your file is no exception. So I just want to point out that we've really done two things by saving the file. One is that we have saved the file in its current state. But two, we have also had the Eclipse tool run the compiler and compile the program. And how do we know that it worked? Well, it has no error indicators on it. Okay? So for instance, if we go back to that semicolon and we back up over the semicolon, now we've got a missing semicolon error, and we can still save that file, but it's not properly compiled. And also, if you go down here to the bottom panel, there's a tab for problems, and we can see we've got one error. Okay, so what we do is we get all the errors out. Again, we're going to put that semicolon back. All right, and then we save. And not only is it saved, but it's properly compiled. So now we're ready to run a test. Okay, testing is going to be very important in this class. And what I want to do is talk a little bit generally about testing. The purpose of testing, as a great theorists have said, is to discover errors. So what we want to do is we want to run this program, and we want to be able to tell if it meets all the requirements or if it has some kind of error in it. So what are the requirements? Well, the requirement is to print out hello, comma, world, exclamation. Okay, so it's looking pretty promising here. So we've only got one thing that has to do. It just has to solve one test case. So we're only going to have to run it one time to do that. And we're going to do a pretty simple version of testing. We're going to run the program, and we're going to inspect the output. Okay, and when we inspect the output, we're going to expect it to say hello world, exclamation point. Let's see if we can do that. So how do we run a test? Well, because we're in the Eclipse IDE, we don't have to get out and get back in and that kind of stuff. We can go and we can run a test. Now, you can do this several different ways, just like everything else. Here's the one that I like. Up in this toolbar on top of the panels that we're working in is a green play button, like the one you'd see on a DVD player or a VCR if you're from that era. And this is for running a test. But the first time that you run a test on a program, you have to get a little more information. Now, how could we do that? Well, we just take this drop-down triangle to the right of the big green play button. And then we want to say we want to run as, and then we pick Java application, because that's what it is. We have a Java application program. So let's run that. And look, we got a tab that popped up down here in the bottom panel. It's called the console, and it says hello world, exclamation point, with a comma space in the right spot. So I think we've had a successful test. Well, oddly enough, there are people who talk about testing that says a successful test is where you find an error in your program, and an unsuccessful one is when you don't find any errors in your program. So whether we just had an unsuccessful test or a successful test really depends upon your point of view. But we're finished with testing because we got what we're looking for, and there's only one case that we're trying to test. So that's done. Now, I said we could have done that a different way. How could we have done that a different way? Well, instead of working with I want to show you one more thing about the play button. Every time, I think I mentioned a while ago that it's typical for us to write a little bit of code, do a little bit of testing, a little bit of code, a little bit more testing. So this going from coding to testing is something that we do fairly frequently in an iterative kind of a way. Well, do we have to go exactly through the sequence we just went through every time we want to run the program? No. What we went through the last time, where we take the drop down to the right of the play button and we say run as Java application, you only need to do that the first time, okay? At that point, you have created a configuration for the testing framework. After that, every time you're ready to run a test, just save your code, okay, which would be the diskette icon, and just click on the play button, and it runs again. Click, and it runs again. Click, and it runs again. Okay, so we would change the code, save it, run it again. Change the code, save it, run it again. This is a typical thing we can do. What if you're not oriented towards toolbar icons? Well, up on the menu, there's a run option. So go up to run. Okay. And then run as Java application. All right. So that's the first time. Okay. Then after that, we could say run. Okay. So we have got it done. We have tested the program. We're getting the results that we were anticipating. We've created our first Eclipse project. It was a Java project. We created the classic Hello World Java program, and we have everything that we want. There's a lot of things that we could learn how to do from here, but we're going to save those for another day. So looking forward to going through a lot of these tutorials with you as we go from week to week in the course. And until then, I'm going to say bye. Bye-bye.